bike park season is right around the corner and my first Whistler trip is coming up. So now we're gonna do a bike check of my Devinci chainsaw. As far as this chainsaw build goes, a couple special things we did. So we got the Öhlins fork. It's still at 200 mils of travel up front. And then we swapped out the rear shock for a longer stroke, which allows for 180 mils of travel at the back. I also had a build kit off of the Session with the Saint brakes. Wanted to keep those guys for sure. So I got the Saint brakes front and rear with 200 rotors. Got a carbon bar, not a high rise, but a nice high front end anyway. And it's set up mullet. As far as the wheels go, we got the Ethirteen downhill LG1 aluminum wheels. They got that built-in 7-speed cassette on the back. The Shimano Z cranks. And the Ethirteen Grappler Enduro tire up front with a all-terrain downhill casing on the rear. Finally, we put the Deity grips on there and the Deity I-beam saddle. So I opted for the chainsaw over last year's Session for a couple reasons. It's got a little less travel, but the big thing is a significantly shorter wheelbase and a significantly shorter rear end. This bike rides more like a mullet specific bike, whereas the Session just was very long and it was super fun and fast. But when you're playing around, trying to do some tricks and doing more slow speed tech features, the shorter wheelbase is actually pretty nice. It still has a super slack head tube angle and it still pedals super well, but that high pivot gets that rear wheel out of the way and just makes for a really fun bike, whether you're going mock chicken or cruising at more normal speeds. So the other cool thing about this high pivot is just how the suspension works here. That rear wheel does a great job of getting out of the way, yet it's a pretty short back end with the Super Boost hub spacing. So you really have a stiff rear end that likes to go fast, but when you smash it into some rocks, the high pivot design allows the back to get longer and feels even more settled at speed, which is a very welcome feeling when you're looking at a run out you've never seen before, or you need to stop quickly on a squamish slab. I rode this bike a ton this winter, set up more as an enduro style rig. I was constantly surprised what it was capable of and the traction, even in the wet. It's not all about what the bike can do, it's about how the bike makes you feel. And I felt great on this bike. I was able to step up to a number of features I had never done with confidence. I'm now excited to return it to its full bike park garb with increased travel at the back. It's also super quiet suspension setup, which I like. I'd rather just hear the trail rather than the bike. Those Ethirteen hubs though are definitely on the louder side. A little bit of a budget build here, but also what was left over. So I got the Z cranks as well as the Z rear derailleur. You know, you smack that into a rock, it's a fair bit cheaper to replace. I would have gone with some Saint cranks, but I had trouble finding them in this bottom bracket because this bike does have a more traditional 73mm bottom bracket shell. But I did opt for the Saint shifter. You get faster upshifts, and the multi-release downshifts allow you to drop gears like crazy. So as I mentioned before, it's got 180 mils of travel now in the back, and that was all done just by running a longer stroke shock. I could actually have clipped the spacer in the original shock, but I found this one on a great sale, so opted for that. It's now a 75mm stroke instead of the stock 70mm. And as far as geometry goes, the head angle is sitting right there around 62 degrees. So really nice and slack for those high speeds, but not as long as some bikes in this category. It actually only has a 426 chainstay length, so a really short rear end, which makes for a very maneuverable bike with this much travel. I'm hoping this will just be the ultimate bike park slayer. We'll see.